I don't know what's going on here, but let's rewind the time and go back a couple of days and start from the beginning. And welcome back to another episode here from the Off-Grid Garage in not so sunny Australia. We have 2.8 amps outside. It's a bit cloudy. It was amazing this morning. So I've used all this energy to charge the car, and now the battery hovers at 28% and nothing goes in it anymore. Literally, since the first video here on the channel, people want me to connect my BMS to the Victron system and show the state of charge and amps and volts and all the data coming from the battery management system. And I always said, nah, don't worry about it. It's not worth it. It just adds complexity. It is not something you actually need. And to be honest, I'm still at this same opinion. But people don't stop nagging me, leaving nasty comments under my videos and want me to connect BMSes to our Victron system because it has so many benefits. And at some stage I said, well, okay, let's order a whole bunch of adapters here and see what we actually get. Is it worth connecting your BMS to the Victron system? Let's find out. And as you have seen in the intro, I have quite a few BMSes here, and I want to try to connect them all to our battery and the Victron system and see if we can read the data on the VRM through the Raspberry Pi. And to be very clear and honest with you here, this is not something I have invented, I have discovered, I have developed, I have designed. So all the credit, what we are going to do today, needs to go to, what is this? Louis van der, what is his name? Louis van der Wal. Shit, I butchered it again. Louis van der Wald. He's from South Africa, but his name sounds very Dutch. So Louis van der Wald is the Indiana Jones of BMSes, the Harrison Ford of coding. And I myself would have no idea where to start with doing such a project. So we are really grateful to having these people in our community and providing these services and projects for free for us. So let's get right into it. Let's have a look at the D-Bus serial battery. So, and here's a quick summary. This is the driver for Venus OS devices, any GX device. So you can have a Servo GX or a color control, whatever you have. Anything Venus OS running or a Raspberry Pi can use these drivers. So the driver will communicate with a battery management system, BMS, that supports serial communication, TTL, RS-232 or RS-485. Modbus RTU type commands and publish this data. What? Basically his software connects your BMS to the Venus OS system. And you can set your BMS as the battery monitor in Venus OS. So you don't need a smart shunt or a battery monitor from Victron. You can use your BMS and it acts like a battery monitor. Okay, what types of BMSes are actually supported? We've got the LLTP power, the good old Jabata JBD BMS, the Overkill Solar BMS, or any other BMS which uses the Xiang phone app. And of course the DALY BMS, but also the very cheap Ant BMS, an MNB Spy BMS. I had never heard of this before. Thankfully, the JK BMS and also the Heltec BMS and a Renogy BMS. I wasn't aware they are making BMSes as well. I thought they're doing like camping stuff style batteries and solar portable inverters. Learned something already. And I have already set up our test battery here with the JK BMS because this is the first one I want to connect to our Venus OS system. And I want to use this one as an example and show you how this works step by step. And this one is so easy, you would not believe it. And as you have seen in the intro, I have bought quite a couple of these USB inverters, converters. So these ones are all USB to RS-485 in both directions. And I bought the cheapest one I could find, a medium one, and one of the more expensive ones. And I also bought these two heads here for the Raspberry Pi. And they are supposed to enable CAN communication on the Pi. So we can connect our Seplos BMS to one of these converters here and read out the data with the Raspberry Pi into the Venus OS. So I'm really keen to see if this actually works. But in today's video we are concentrating on the RS485 and on, well, I've got a DALY BMS here, and I also have a JBP BMS here, and of course the JK BMS in a 4S 8S version. And of course we also need our good old Raspberry Pi. Thankfully I've got one here in my pocket. The SD card on this one here has been freshly re-imaged last night to the latest Venus OS 2.9. So this is the Venus OS Large, which also comes with Node-RED installed. And we potentially can use the data from the JK BMS, from any of the other BMSs in Node-RED to control our system to do something with this data later on down the track. So hence we go with the large installation this time. Okay, 5 volt. You can see the power light is coming on, and there should also be an, why is there no activity? Ah, here it comes. So I was just, it's all good, it's starting up. Nice. So, and now you can see the remote console of the Raspberry Pi, which I have installed last night. And there's no devices connected, nothing attached. You can see all the USB ports here, nothing is connected, just the power supply. And I connected to the Wi-Fi, so we have the IP address ready to go. And if we go into the settings here, we will see nothing. It is the basic setup. So if you haven't done already, you need to get root access to your Raspberry Pi or to your GX device. To do this, go to the settings, click on General, and here at the top in the access level, you need to get super user access. Usually it says something like user and installer or something like this. You want to highlight this line in blue and then click and hold the button here on the right. So click and hold for about 5 seconds. And then all of a sudden, your user and installer turns into the super user. And in the second step, you have to set a root password. So we set this one to PASSW0RD. Don't tell anyone. And we click on OK. And you also want to activate the SSH on LAN. And this is pretty much everything you need to do in preparation of installing the serial battery driver from Louis van der Wald. Let's get out of here. In the next step, you want to get access via PuTTY to your Raspberry Pi. So download PuTTY, it's a free download. Type in the IP address of your GX device, 0054. And you will see this security warning at the beginning. Click on accept. And you want to log into your GX device as root with the password you have set in your device, 0RD. And we are in. So we are now going back to Louis's website on the GitHub. And here on the first page under the summary of the project, click on the how to install link. And pretty much this page explains how you install these drivers on your GX device. So please read this page carefully. I put the link down under the video and on my website as well. So you need a Venus OS device, GX device, Venus OS, Serbo, Raspberry Pi, etc. On this device, you also need to activate DVCC, which is the Victron DVCC, which is the distributed voltage and current control. Who would have thought? With this option enabled, your GX device will be able to talk to a smart BMS. So, and he also talks about the different adapters you can use, the chips FT. I don't know, I bought just these RS485 adapters here to see how they work. I'm not sure what kind of chip they have, but let's find out. Some of these chips, they already have the driver installed in the Venus OS. So you don't need to do anything. You just plug the USB adapter in, connect your serial cable to your BMS, and you're done. And very important is here that you should only connect the ground, the TX and the RX for sending and receiving data, but not the voltage positive. Because sometimes these little devices, they come with 4 connectors, but you need only 3 unless your USB adapter is isolated. Because then you need a power supply from either side, and you need to connect your V plus as well, usually plus 5 volts. And here Luis explains how to install this driver from a USB stick, plugging it into a GX device and then restarting, and it grabs the information from the USB stick then and installs it automatically in your device. We are not going to do that today because this is the easy part. So you just need to follow these few steps from his website. But I want to show you how to install this very easily from the SSH console. So step number 1, log into your Venus OS device using an SSH client like PuTTY or Bash. Run these commands to install or update to the latest release version. So we are just going and copy this whole line. Copy. When we're going back into our console and we do a right click just in here with the cursor inside this window, do a right click and it pastes the information in your window. And then you hit enter. And you will see it's not downloading. It has already downloaded the driver. And here in the next step, you can just do a copy and paste again. Whoopsie, forgot the S. Copy this whole line. Go back into your console. Do a right click and an enter. Bang, installed. This is everything you need to do. We are good to go. Okay, actually, we have to do a reboot now. So you go back into your console and you type in reboot, enter, and now the Raspberry Pi or your GX device does a reboot. And from then on, the driver is active in the Venus OS. So this is all you need to do. Isn't that amazing? Okay, before we leave his website here, I want to point out there is... here's the link for troubleshooting. If something is not working, please have a look at his website and the troubleshooting guide he provided as well. There are some scripts in here where you can actually see what is going on. It is scanning through the log files of your GX device and shows you what is wrong or what is not working. So it makes it actually very easy to troubleshoot and to rectify the problem. We leave this website open here because I want to go back in a second. I want to show you actually what is in these log files and how to check if the driver is correctly installed. Usually you don't need to do this, but I want to show you what is going on in the background with this driver. Just so in case something is not working, you know how to troubleshoot it. Okay, let's reconnect to our remote console. We go into the settings again, and nothing has really changed because we have still nothing connected. And because the JK BMS is the most popular BMS at the moment, I want to start with this one and show you how to connect this one to your Raspberry Pi and Venus OS now. And we want to have a look. At the connections on one side of the BMS. One of them is labeled RS485, right? And this is exactly the connector where you don't want to connect your RS485 because it makes sense, right? You want to use the GPS port instead. So the GPS port is actually the one you have to connect your RS485 to. But I think this is only for the 4S, 8S version of this BMS. All the other BMSs, the 8 to 16 or 8 to 24, well, this one here, you know, this BMS here has actually an RS485/CAN port, and this is where you have to connect it. You also need this adapter. There are two different adapters on the market. They are both for the JK BMS, but one of them is a modified one for the 4S, 8S version because it runs on a lower voltage. While the other one is actually the one for the 8 to 24S version. So if you buy these adapters here, they are like $14, $15. Links are all down below. If you buy these adapters, please double, triple, quadruple check with the Hangzhou store or any other supplier you buy them from if they are suitable for your BMS. So 4S, 8S needs one adapter or 8S to 24S needs a different adapter. not the same adapter. It could be actually the same adapters, maybe different power supplies inside. And I have already labeled mine because I started with this one here, and this one didn't work with the JK BMS at all. So I figured out it must be the other one then. And for sure, this one is actually working with the 4S 8S version. And this little 4-port plug here fits only in the GPS port of your BMS. It doesn't fit in the RS485 port, so you cannot actually get it wrong. Nami explained to me that these BMSes, the 4S 8S version, are modified BMSes, but I don't know why they cannot modify the printing on the BMS as well. Why would you label the BMS like RS485? But this is not the port you are using for RS485. You have to use the GPS port. Anyway, let's keep cracking here. And as I said before, I bought different USB to RS485 adapters. USB to RS485. This one comes with a 5-port plug terminal. This one has only 3, and this one has 4. So which one is actually working and which not? They are all working. I linked them all down below and on my website as well as usually. So here the blue one was like $5.07 working. This one here with the cable was $5.98 working as well. And the wave share was actually far more expensive, $26.50, because it's a wave share, you know, it's a brand. Well, these ones are, and I especially like this one here because it comes with a short piece of cable, and we know the USB ports on the Raspberry are so close together. It makes it actually hard to plug in these ones here and use the other USB ports. You would need a piece of extension cable or a hub or something anyway. So I found this one actually here quite attractive. Okay, then let's use this one, huh? Well, I think the wave share is so expensive because it comes with a small screwdriver as well. And a 1 meter USB extension cable. $26.50. There you go. So before we plug in our USB to RS485 adapter into the Raspberry Pi, we want to do some troubleshooting. I know we haven't plugged it in yet, but I want to show you what's actually happening. So here in the troubleshooting page, copy this path here, data log dbus serial battery TTY USB 0/current, and go back into your console of your GX device and use the command tail-f data log and then the path you've just copied from the website. Hit enter, and here you will see that the actual driver is now scanning the USB to RS485 adapter for potential BMSes. If we stop this here with Control-C, we can see it's testing a DALY, another DALY, the JK BMS, the SinoWealth, the Renogy, the Revove, whatever that is, and the JBD as well, and BMS, and then it starts with the DALY again. And you always get an error, no reply, so it's trying to contact all these BMSes one after another to get an answer from them, and none of them replies, because, well, we haven't connected our BMS yet. But this process actually shows you that your driver and your RS485 adapters are already working, and they are just waiting for the BMS to be connected. Okay, let's do that. So, let's take off the terminal. So this plug goes into our BMS, and the other one ends here in 3 bare wires. And usually it states on the other side what kind of color A, B, and ground is, but well, my Chinese is a bit rusty. And then I printed this little sticker here to help me out in the future. So yellow is A, white is B. So in this case here, we only need the ground, the B and the A, and we don't want to connect the red one, the 5 volt, but there is no red one in this case anyway. So only for these isolated adapters, you have to connect the 5 volt plus here as well. Okay, I think it goes in this order. Black is ground, white is B, and A is yellow. Okay, and then we plug in our terminal to the adapter and connect the other side to our BMS. So here we go. and this only goes in one direction. Cable is plugged into the BMS, converter, terminal, RS485 to USB converter into the Raspberry Pi. And now we are running the same command again, tail-F and then the path, enter. And we want to see what happens now, because it is scanning for all the BMSs it knows now. The DALY BMS error, testing JK BMS, connection established to JK BMS. So it has actually found a BMS it can talk to. And if we have a look now into our console here, we can already see we have now a battery monitor connected. It tells us we are on 95% state of charge, 0 watts, 13.2 volts, and no amps at the moment. So having a look at the settings, here you can see the settings notification and now the serial battery JK BMS version 0.12. This is the driver version, the software version you're running. We've just copied from Lewis's website and installed this here on the Raspberry Pi or your GX device. And you can see the data and information here again. And if we click on this button, we can see actually more. State of charge, we can see the temperatures, the top section voltage and the bottom section voltage. I don't know what that is. And the midpoint deviation is 0%. I don't know exactly why we have this information in here, but I'm sure we will have someone leaving a comment under the video explaining what these information are for. Consumed ampere hours may or may not work with your BMS, it depends. And then we've got details, alarms, history, input, output, device, parameters. So a heap of information we can get out of the BMS into our Venus OS now. So let's have a look under details. This is probably the most important, most interesting one. We've got the lowest cell voltage is cell number 3 with 3.298 volt, and the highest is cell number 1 with 3.299. So under alarms, nothing is flagged at the moment. Low voltage, high battery voltage, high current, high discharge current, low state of charge. And I think there are heaps of more alarms here, which we can actually use later on in Node-RED or in Home Assistant to trigger an alarm, to turn on a relay, to start a charger, to turn off your inverter, all this kind of stuff. So here on Lewis's website, there is a whole list of features which gives you all the parameters you can read out of your BMS. More or less, not all BMSs are equal. He actually provided a table on this website which shows all the features available by any of the supported BMSs at the moment. That is amazing. So before we go into any further details with that, we actually have to go into the settings again and go into DVCC, which is our digital, what is it called again? Distributed voltage and current control, and turn this on. Turn this one on. And here you can set parameters for limit the charge current, for example. When you hit a certain state of charge, a certain voltage, you can then start limiting your charge current through your solar charge controllers. And you can do the same with the charge voltage. And these are exactly the limits you can control here in the DVCC of your Venus OS. Okay, let's connect our power supply here. And let's charge with 1.6 amps. And we can already see that we have a current flowing into our battery now of 1.4 amps through our BMS, which acts as a battery monitor in Venus OS now. So you don't need to buy a smart shunt anymore if you have only one battery and one BMS. If I increase the current here to 5 amps, we will see an increase here as well, 4.7. Okay, this BMS is not calibrated. And this concludes our tutorial how to connect the JK BMS to your Venus OS system from Victron. This is all you need to do, right? This is so simple. This is one of the easiest tutorials I've ever made. And this is all thanks to Lewis van der Wald. So, and if you appreciate all the amazing work Lewis has done, you can click on the support link on his website and buy him a beer or a coffee. So instead of buying me a beer, just buy Lewis a coffee and support his amazing work. And a couple of days ago, I tried also to connect the DALY BMS to the Venus OS and didn't have any luck, because this is one of the smallest one you can buy here, 4S 100 amp version, and it doesn't even come with a RS485 port. But I have now read the really long thread on the Victron community page, and Louis actually explained that it's not necessary to use the RS485 port here with the DALY BMS. You can just use the UART to USB adapter, the USB UART. So apparently you plug this one in, plug this one to your Raspberry Pi, and it reads the information straight away once his driver and software is installed correctly. Let's connect the B- and the balance cables. I've checked the voltages before, and this will make your BMS work. And now we plug in the UART and use the USB cable to go into the Raspberry. So this is all we need to do. Okay, it still shows us the 95%, but if we go into settings, we may, oh yeah, there it is already. We've got one JK BMS and one DALY BMS connected now to the Venus OS. And you can see how the information are different now because, well, the DALY doesn't know what the state of charge is. The JK BMS doesn't know. They're all guessing from the voltages, but they're all showing up here in the system now. The limitation at the moment is we can connect only one BMS and make it work with the Venus OS. So whatever BMS you connect the first to the Raspberry Pi or your GX device will show up as the main battery monitor. See, this is the JK BMS showing 95%, and there's no way to change this unless you unplug everything and plug the DALY in first, and then the DALY will be your main battery monitor. The driver and software can handle only one battery and one BMS at the time. But Louis is working on a solution for that because, well, everyone these days has got more than one battery they want to connect to their system. And the problem at the moment is that all these BMSs have the same ID or something inside the system. I don't know anything about it, I just read the forums. But he's actively working on a solution. So this is another good idea to support him financially as well. Give him a little bit of encouragement. But I'm sure at some stage we will have multiple batteries and multiple BMSs here available. And then we can select which one will be our battery monitor. Because here in the settings, in system setup, battery monitor, see there's only one BMS available. It's either automatic or the DALY BMS. If we click the DALY, I think, see, it is still showing the JK BMS actually, even we have selected the DALY, because the JK was first. I have also connected the 16S JK BMS here in the middle shelf. And we can use one of these adapters now. And we plug this into our Raspberry as well. Just need to use another extension cable. So here we can see the JK BMS 4S 8S and the DALY BMS connected, and we are now plugging in the JK BMS number 2. Let's see what happens. And there it is. So we now have 3 BMSs connected to our Venus OS. So the DALY and the JK BMS are connected to the 12-volt battery, and the third BMS is connected to our big battery in the middle shelf. So we are charging 100 watts into this middle shelf battery at the moment, 1.82 amps, 53 point something volt, 18 degrees. And here under details we can also see the lowest and highest battery cell now. So, and here if we go into the Off-Grid Garage test environment and go into our remote console, turn the screen, and we now have access to our JK BMS in the middle shelf there and can see the lowest and highest cell and the temperatures and what the BMS does. And this works from your mobile phone from wherever you are. So we now have remote access to all the BMSs basically via the mobile phone. At least we can read the parameters and can see what's going on. And for some people, this is already enough. It's a peace of mind. You know what's going on if you're not at home. You can see the BMS details and can then turn off the solar charge controllers if something happens. And you probably can now see how I ended up with this desk you have seen at the beginning of the video. when we are going to add more and more cables and USB adapters and extension cables, and we're just getting there. And I like especially these adapters here with a clear plastic, because you can see the LEDs for sending and receiving information. This one has 2 LEDs here as well. And the more expensive wave share has got power sending and receiving as well here as LEDs. While this one, for example, doesn't have anything, so you don't know if there's any activity between the DALY BMS and your Raspberry Pi. But with these ones, you can clearly see there is communication there. Okay, guys, we have now successfully connected 3 different BMSes at the same time to the Venus OS. And as you have seen, it needs only the installation of Lewis's driver in your GX device, and then everything is fine afterwards. Okay, guys, I would say so far this video from today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all your amazing support here on the channel. Please don't forget to support Lewis as well. Buy him a coffee, support him financially and his project. He's an amazing guy from South Africa. All this driver, all these manuals for free. And he also contributes a lot on the Victron community forum as well as the do-it-yourself solar forum. So please support him as well. Until the next video, guys, when I show you the disaster with the can heads and the Raspberry Pi. You stay charged, stay safe, and thanks again for watching. See you then. Bye-bye.